Okay, we're back! And we're doing a League of Legends every single champion tier list. Things to note. This is Aurora update. We've had no champions since then. When I get down to Skarner, which is quite a long way away, I think I'm using old Skarner picture, and we'll just have to go on the fact that it's old Skarner. But we will be ranking both versions. We'll talk about both versions. Okay, I'm going to try and make this quick because there's like 160 champions now, and time is money, baby. So let's go. Aatrox, Destroyer of Worlds, Design Rise. There's still some pain over the rework, although I think he is overall a better champion. I think most people would agree he probably belongs on the upper side. Ahri is in many ways the face of League of Legends, and continues to make women play the game, so that's definitely S. Akali's good, but when she's strong, she's super annoying, and shows she's going there. This is based on no objective factors, if it's not already clear. Akshan largely exists to me to allow Drewtoot to continue smurfing in Challenger, but I think in terms of how relevant this champion actually is to the game, he's about a C. He also sort of took away the spotlight during the Ruination event from champions who people actually care about. Alistar to me is B. I think he's served us for a long time. He's also, a very simple champion to understand. I think that first moment when you get the combo down as a new player is really exciting, and so for me, Alistar's going B. Amumu, again, another great new player champ. However, I think in terms of lore and stuff, he's often forgotten about. And so Amumu's going C. Anivia's got some relevance to Freljord, but that really feels like an old champion that maybe just needs a little bit more love now. Annie is B. Like Ahri, she's often seen as a face of League, but Annie is, again, does not receive as much love as Ahri does. Aphelios is B for me. I think he definitely took away a lot of attention from other AD carries, maybe last season before that, if he was released then, if I remember right. But he's in a sort of weird state now. I think people like him, and I think he's generally a good addition to AD carry. But he's maybe not quite living up to the super high complexity AD carry that he was supposed to be. Ashe is S. Ashe is super reliable. Really does her job quite well. And I don't think anyone minds that she's in the game. ASOL rework is going to go B for me, and that's maybe controversial, but I think when we talk about what that champion, sort of makes people feel, I think the sort of fantasy of being a star-destroying Sky Dragon who created everything is really awesome. I don't know if either old or new ASOL have ever fully lived up to that. I did like old ASOL, but then I'm an ARAM player, so maybe not the best sort of representation. Aurora for me is going D. I don't really understand it. Honestly feels like furry bait, and that's sort of how I feel about it. Super broken on release. Design's super annoying. I have not experienced enough Aurora positively at the moment to give it anything higher than that. Again, people will be angry about that. I don't really give a fuck. Okay, Azir. Not going to be biased by certain people who might watch this. I'm going to put Azir in C, I think. To me, makes pro mid meta really sort of boring and stale. I think they've tried to rework him, they've tried to make him more solo queue viable, but honestly that champ is a pro champ, and for a normal player is sort of really hard to execute. Bard's going A. I think Bard's awesome. I think Bard, design-wise, is really interesting. I think it's hard to have any issues with him. I think he's likeable and has an interesting play style. And I'm never really angry to see someone pick Bard, although it might mean that I'm left alone in bot lane if I'm playing AD carry. Bel'Veth can go B. I think there was a lot of outrage when she was released about her being a beautiful woman when she's supposed to be a monster champ, but I think that quickly went away as we figured out what Riot were doing. I think, again, like gameplay wise is where I've got issues with Bel'Veth. Really sort of strange mix of scaling champ with 70% durability on her E. It's kind of weird. And so I'm putting her as a B. Blitzcrank is A tier. Again, he would really just benefit from a little bit of love from Riot. I think in terms of what the champ does, I think he's almost perfectly balanced. I think he has been almost perfectly balanced for a really long time. It's going to be really strange if anything happens to sort of throw that off now. And I think everyone likes Blitz, even if they don't like getting grabbed. Brand is going to go C, only because I think the actual concept of the champion is a little bit dated now. I think to play Brand is super fun. To play against, especially this season, Brand has been an absolute nightmare. I think he's been strong for a long time. People have only just realised it. And so Brand's going to C. Braum is S for me. This is the face of what a supporter should do. He sacrifices himself for his teammates. I think the concept's awesome. I think the tying in with the Freljord's awesome. Every time I see Braum in game, I'm happy. Caitlyn's going A. I think despite Arcane, Caitlyn still comes across as like a very vanilla sort of character. There's not a lot of flavour to Caitlyn. She's not super interesting. Super easy to pick up and play, but not a very interesting champion. However, updates to skins and things like that mean Caitlyn is more likeable than she was at some points. Camille is going to go A as well. I think when we talk about top lane, it's kind of hard to mention top lane without someone like Camille. Camille's sort of one of the faces of top lane and sort of is a great indicator of how that role is played. It's a great champion to learn. The design is awesome. Who knows, we might even see her in Arcane later in the year. Cassio C, that's a champion that hasn't fully been trusted to be what Riot wanted it to be. I think the design is a little bit weird. I think parts of the kit feel dated. Sort of just sits and scales for 50 minutes and gets mana items. Kind of boring, to be honest. Could be really interesting, but isn't. Cho'Gath is B. I think we would all love to see a Cho'Gath visual rework at this point. I think his kit especially is super dated at this point. I think we have to be honest about that. I think anyone who's played Cho'Gath in the last sort of 3-4 years will realise, holy fuck, this champion feels like something out of 2008, and really could maybe do with a little bit of love. Corki design wise, I'm going to put B, but I think in terms of gameplay, Corki's going to go C, so I'm going to settle for a B here, and hopefully this is not too controversial. I think just as a design and a concept, the idea of Yordles is really fun. I like the idea that this is sort of a goofy little guy in an aeroplane. But again, like in terms of how Corki, when he's strong, warps the mid meta in pro play, I think there is a little bit of love lost between me and Corki. Darius is going to go A. I think he's a great representation of Noxus as a region and what Riot wants Noxus to be. I think he's super annoying to play against, but then I'm a little bit of a scrub, I suppose. And I think actually, in terms of his kit, it's largely quite well designed. Diana's gonna go B. I'm not in love with Diana. I think when she's strong, she's sort of annoying. But I think a lot of Targon champs sort of get a bit of a pass and a bit of a break because largely they are visually very well designed, and Diana is a great example of that. Draven's gonna go B2. I think often Draven players are super obnoxious and super annoying. They either win the game by themselves or lose it, and they're quite happy to play that role. I think the sort of concept of a gladiator warrior is largely fulfilled because you have to be super skilled, obviously, to play Draven properly. But I think again, even someone like Draven feels kind of dead now. Mundo, and let's say this is reworked Mundo, is gonna go in B. I think reworked Mundo is slightly better than old Mundo, but there's always part of me that misses his old W, and the way it just used to sort of spin around as like 3 fireballs used to just be sort of, I don't know, it felt like playing an old Nintendo game or something, so I'm still going to miss that, and I'm going to put him as B. I think it's a largely pretty okay champ. Echo would be A, I think, but he's not been relevant for a really long time. You don't see many people, do you, who just decide that they're going to be an Echo main and only play Echo. I think largely, actually, his kit is quite uninteresting now, apart from his ult. And again, I don't find Echo super engaging. Again, he might, maybe he's going to get some love when Arcane comes out this year. Elise is going to go C. She's been sort of left out in the dark for a super long time. again, as shapeshifters are always inherently a little bit interesting, just because they've always got 8 abilities and no ult. But I don't think Elise is the best. She turns into a stun bot past like minute sort of 20, 25, and again, she could really do with a little bit of love. I don't like Evelynn to play against, but I think largely in terms of a concept, the champion is really good. The skins are really awesome. It's just that I used to main jungler, and I never, even when I was maining jungle, could play this champion. Something about it just didn't ever click with me, and to play it just never clicked with me. Ezreal is one of the faces of the league. It's good to get a more caster style ADC, and even when he came out, he was quite a sort of revolutionary champion. It was a good indicator of where the game would go over time, I suppose. Fiddlesticks rework. Well, what have I just done? Fiddlesticks rework, where did I put him? He was in B. Fiddlesticks rework's going to get A. In terms of a concept, that's really sort of well developed. I like the way his kit plays into the idea that he's a demonic entity, and the sort of passive that he's given is actually really interesting. I think Fiddle is one of those abilities where it's got a really nice niche, and the sort of surprise element of it is really awesome. Fiora is, like Camille, one of the sort of faces of the top lane. I don't know if Fiora is quite existing with the same amount of respect that she had maybe 2 years ago. Why that is sort of hard to say. Maybe it's about item changes. Design wise, I find the character a little bit strange. Demacian sort of French woman is a little bit strange. The fencing element is cool, but I don't know if her kit fully explores it. Fizzes B, great as a counter to mages. Actually deceptively simple champion to play, and he's going to get a B. Galio for me is an A. I'm always like my big tanky boys. Galio's a great example of that. The sort of role of protecting the team is really interesting, really awesome. The rework was a really good change, although again there's a little bit of nostalgia there for old Galio, and the sort of massive AoE taunt, but he's going to get an A. GP is C, and that's because I wish he was a little bit easier to play. I think the sort of pirate with the big beard is really interesting and really engaging concept. I just think complexity wise the champ is largely too difficult for the average player for the payoff that you get. Garen is gonna go in S. Easy to play, pretty simple concept. Dumb guy with a big sword that spins around, and I think he's a great way to get people into top lane. Now he's gonna get S. I think, was it like someone said the other day that it's 10 years since Na was released, which made me feel absolutely ancient. But the idea of a little guy changing into a big guy for his most powerful move is awesome, and he's been a strong pick through most of the time he's been in the game, and he's a great sort of addition to top. Gragas for me is not going to go S+, but only because he's not really got any lore. We don't really know much about him. He's just a guy who arrived with a big barrel and started hitting people. He's one of my favourite champions in the game by far. He's just never really had enough sort of story presence to back it up. Right after that, I've done it again. Where did I put him? Graves is not C. He's going to go in A tier. Again, like 2-3 years ago, Graves was the jungler, and is a great representation of a jungler who sort of thinks for themselves and plays more like an ADC. Obviously, we're going to get to Kindred in a minute, and she's similar. But I think Graves, when he's strong, dominates pro, and for a while was kind of interesting to see a meta that revolved exclusively around junglers. Gwen's kind of cool, and again, it's nice to see a champ from Shadow Isles that's not just green ghost. I don't have an awful lot more to say about her. I find her quite obnoxious if I'm playing a tank player, but otherwise, I think Gwen's going to go B. It's always quite worrying when we see a Gwen picked against us, because none of us really know how to play against it super well. Hecarim is one of my boys. One of the champs I've got highest mastery on. I think the fantasy is largely super well fulfilled now. I think he's in a lot better balanced state than he was at one point. And I've always found his concept super cool as like a ghostly spectral rider. I find that interesting. I think he's got some awesome skins. I think his gameplay is pretty good now too. There is some definite skill expression in Hecarim. That means I'm going to put him here. Hammerdinger's weird, and I think Hammerdinger's one of those ones where you look at him and you're like, yeah, great inventor from Piltover, but it's a champ that you feel like they largely had to develop the new League of Legends around the fact that they'd already put this in the game. He's a really sort of weird champion. A little guy who sort of puts turrets down and stuns you. Super annoying. And I think if they were designing League again from the ground up, they probably wouldn't include something like Heimerdinger. That's my opinion. Illai's cool. Illai is a great example of a bit more maybe body diversity in the female league cast. Really annoying to play against. Actually, in fact, simply because of that, I'm going to put her in B. I think her gameplay doesn't really match the fantasy that this is someone who prays to the god of the sea and wields the power of the sea. I think it just relies on hitting your ability, which is kind of boring. Aurelia at one time was one of the faces of the league, but she's really fallen off. Feels largely irrelevant now. Feels like one of these sort of forgotten about champions, which is a shame. Great sort of montage potential, and again, really exists as like a sort of symbol of the past in League. I feel like League's largely moved past Aurelia as a champion. Ivern for me is going to go A. I think the concept's really cool, super unique execution, supportive jungler. Yep, ticks all the boxes. Kind of goofy, kind of whimsical. We need more shit like Ivern, in my opinion. Janna's going to go B. And that's because Wind Mage, who supports teammates, is cool. It's kind of bland though, I think we can all agree. Her kit's pretty cool. But it feels like, again, she's one of these champions that's maybe a little bit dated now. Jarvan's going to go S. Again, when we talk about Demacia, Jarvan's a really great representation of Demacia. Gameplay is awesome. Always been picked in pro. Really good representation of junglers as a whole. Jax similarly is S. I think there's a lot of skill involved in Jax play. Good Jax play, watching good Jax players. I think there's decent sort of league lore there in terms of that kid who had to make a wish and he got a Jax skin. That's really cool. I think the rework was largely successful, and I think loads of people would agree Jax is still quite relevant today, despite being a really old champion essentially. Jace is S, great addition to the game, one of the more successful shapeshifters, can be really obnoxious when he's strong, but again I think Jace represents maybe the fact that new League can still be inhabited by these sort of older champions as long as they play an important unique role. Jhin is going to be S, I wanted to put S+, but I think loads of people can agree Jhin is one of the best design champions in the game. He's quite annoying to play. The sort of 4 bullet thing often feels quite unwieldy, and can be really satisfying when you get ahead and you start like one-shotting people. But I think again, like I don't know who's going to go in S+. I don't know if I'm even going to have an S+. Jhin was super close to it, but then I'm looking at like Ahri and Ashe, and I think if I was going to have an S+, one of those would probably be in there too. So I think Jin's going to be S for now. Jinx is that's a tough one as well, isn't it? Again, like maybe after I've done this, we'll see if we can maybe put someone in S+ and see if there's any Fs. But Jinx for me is again one of these sort of faces of the league. We've got a whole animated series about her. When she came out, she was just supposed to be this sort of crazy, wacky Harley Quinn Joker style character. But it's been really great to see the development of the champion, the fact that she's always in some way relevant to actual games, and so she's going to get S. Kai'Sa, more recent addition. I'm going to put Kai'Sa as A. I think it was an interesting addition to the Void as a region, but it did end up just sort of being another sort of sexy lady when actually it could have been a lot more interesting than that. I think her gameplay is quite cool, but I think A is probably the right place for her. Kalista's going to go B. I think there's some interesting stories there with the Shadow Isles. However, I think Kalista again is another of these champions where if she's strong, she sort of dominates pro and the meta's warped around her, and that largely becomes really, really boring. Karma is going to go A, and that might be controversial in a way. Karma's quite simple and quite straightforward. I've always enjoyed playing Karma. I think she's maybe slept on a lot of the time. Tank Karma can be really annoying, don't get me wrong. Put Karma can be really annoying, don't get me wrong. But the fact that she's super flexible and can support people in different ways and could be playing in a lot of different roles, I think I'm going to give Karma A. Karthus is a weird one because I'm going to put him A, I think. Karthus is a weird one because, again, part of this is maybe coloured by nostalgia and remembers the times of people actually playing Karthus mid, which is where he was always supposed to be played. And so maybe part of this is coloured by, Season 2 Worlds and, old TSM and things like that. Karthus now plays it really differently in that he wants to power farm jungle for, like 25-30 minutes before coming out and one-shotting people, which is a lot less interesting, but he is an undead lich. We don't have many of those, so the design space is quite cool. I think his gameplay is kind of cool as well and quite interesting, maybe if it is just based on his passive. Kassadin is going to go B. I think for a while Kassadin was the sort of anti-mage choice. I think he's largely been forgotten about now. Maybe he's in a more balanced state and that's why. I don't find him particularly interesting. I think maybe if there are stories that are unexplored there about going into the void and his Kaiser's daughter or whatever, then it would be a great time to do it now because I think he's largely been forgotten about as it stands. Katarina's going to go C. I find it really sort of strange that they would allow Katarina to do what she does. I think whoever it is who's in charge of Katarina should just decide what they wanted to build and hurry up and just let that be the build, because I'm absolutely sick to death of seeing 500 different Katarina builds and every single one of them works. Okay, I don't think anyone finds that enjoyable. I've no problem with someone who has high mastery on a champion beating me, but building whatever they want is where I start having an issue with it. Kayle can go in A. Always been strong, super cool design, evolves over the game. Yep. I think we can all agree Kayle's quite an interesting champion. Maybe quite boring to play at the start of the game, but as this like always looming threat in the back of your mind, angelic warrior, ties into the lore quite nicely with the Darkin and stuff like that. I think Kayle's going to go here. Kane's B, the idea of a transforming guy is really cool, depending on who he damages. I really like the design of Rast, but part of me doesn't like the design of Shadow Assassin. Just feels like another sort of edgy assassin that Riot have designed in order to appeal to a certain section of the player base, which is probably like 12-year-old boys, if we're being honest. Okay. Kennen's going to go in A. I like the idea of a ninja who's a Yordle. I think he's designed from like, when is this, like, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. He's sort of dating him a little bit now, but I like that Kennen is always relevant. I like his ult. I think it's super iconic. Some of the best League players of all time include Kennen ult. And so he's going to go A for me. Kha'Zix is going to go B. Again, largely forgotten about. Sort of pro play jungler now, I guess. One of these maybe 1v9 style champs. Was super cool when he was released. Obviously super broken. Ambition Faker. Still remember the days of Kha'Zix mid. And so I'm going to put Kha'Zix B. It can be really annoying to play against the Kindred's going to go S. I think this is one of the champs that's also super well designed in terms of like Runeterra's depiction of death and the concept of death. I think Kindred is a really cool concept, and we should give credit. I think the gameplay is not for me, but I'm not going to hold that against her. Cled's going to go A. I was a Cled main for a while as well. Although I find his lack of wave clear before he gets like any sort of Hydra item a little bit annoying. I think his passive is one of the coolest passives in the game, and the idea of remounting in the middle of a fight is super, super awesome. If you've never executed it, then you don't know the pure dopamine that comes from it. Kled is awesome. Kog'Maw can go in B. He's always been this like hyperscale, needs 6 items, playing with a certain other champion, and he will hyperscale and carry the whole team. And that in a way is quite interesting. Again, Kog's one of these champs that again just feels a little bit dated now to me. One can go in A, I think largely because she's more interesting to watch in Pro. I think she's kind of cool as the head of the Black Rose. Maybe the fantasy doesn't quite match up with what we see in gameplay, but the idea of a tricky mage is cool. I think things like a passive could maybe be updated, maybe just to make her slightly more fit that role. Again, passive, especially on LeMonk, feels like, why is this included? It feels kind of useless now. Lee Sin's gonna go S. Awesome design, awesome gameplay. People love to watch him in pro. Great indicator of skill. Great to watch good Lee Sins play. Yeah, Lee's gonna go S. Leona's gonna go S again because I think in terms of support play, that's a fantastic champion to watch. I think Leona represents support quite well, and the other side of support quite well, sort of like Braum does. If Braum is about staying back, Leona is about going in. I think she's always been well designed, and even when she's strong, you're never particularly annoyed by Leona, or at least I'm not. Lilia can go in A. I think it's been a great addition to the game, don't get me wrong. AP power farmer in the jungle. I think jungle maybe needed something like that. I think people are super weird about Lilia being a deer and stuff like that and finding her cute, but I think in terms of her gameplay and how she plays, she's actually quite interesting. Lissandra's going to go A. Again, maybe a champion that's been a little bit forgotten about. Quite interesting in terms of control mage who just wants to lock one person down. Passive's quite interesting. Her role in the story of the Freljord is really cool. And one of my friends plays Lissandra really well. I wish he'd play it a little bit more. Lucian's going to get... Oh, I'd feel bad putting him in B. I'm going to put Lucian in A. And again, he's had a troubled history with balance and certain combos that make him really strong. He's been annoying again this year when he's been played mid when he isn't sort of designed to. I think he's always in a weird balance state where people are always trying to sort of exploit him mid, which makes it sort of hard to give him the credit. He's super fun to play. I think they've tried to rework him a couple of times, but it's never really been successful. And so I would feel bad putting him in S, and I'd feel like I can't put him in B because we've just seen too much Lucian over the course of the league's history since his release. Lou's going to get A. She's a great sort of classic support. Since release, she's been really good example of how should a support boost their allies and keep them safe. She feels like the natural sort of evolution of something like Janna to me. Looks one of the faces of the league, but gameplay wise feels super dated to me. Not as interesting as some of the champions in S. To me, I hate also seeing skins given to people like Lux and Ahri to a certain extent as well, when other champions really need them, simply because no, it's going to sell more skins. I don't find Lux particularly interesting. Malphite. I mean, there's not an awful lot to say about Malphite. He's just a big mountain that is super easy to play and has an iconical and will hard counter certain matchups. Feels super fun playing Malphite, stacking 1,000 armor or whatever. I think he's a good road into top lane, but I think he sort of is held back by simplicity in many ways. Miles is going to get B. Again, the concept's really interesting. The guy from the Void sort of controls minions, but the execution of Malzahar is maybe a little bit bland at this stage. I like his ult, but I feel like his ult is done better by other champions largely. Maokai's going to get A, and again, maybe some of this is fondness for old Maokai and the big circle ult that reduces damage by like 20%. But I think, again, this is a year where Maokai's actually been quite unhealthy in jungle, but I still really like his design. I still really like the way that he plays. I think even after reworked ult, I think Maokai's ult is still really strong. I think there's a lot of actual skill expression in playing Maokai properly and using his W properly. And watching a good jungler play Maokai is really enjoyable. He's going to get C. Feels like a noob stomper. Again, like design wise, could be really interesting, but isn't. Just sort of presses Q and hopefully auto attacks you down. If not, he dies. I think the higher skill level you go, the less good Master Yi becomes. And again, it's a shame to sort of see him relegated to this just auto attacker, where Wuju style feels like it could be so much more interesting than that. That's just me. MF is going to get A. Really cool example of an ADC. Ult is iconic. super simple way into playing an ADC if someone's super new to it. APMF was fun for a while in our room. Yeah, I think I'm happy with it. Maud rework is going to get S. Fantastic design. I think it's one of the ones that Riot really smashed it out of the park on. The lore's really interesting, really cool. Sort of, I don't know, Lord of Death or whatever. Takes your soul, uses you, eventual apocalypse. Yeah, I think Lord's really awesome. Morgana, see, kit feels super dated. Maybe needs a rework at this point. Spell shield's annoying. Needs a little bit of love in my opinion. Nami can go in. I'm gonna put Nami in here. I think that her ult's cool. I think again she sort of functions like Lulu, where she's almost this natural evolution of Janna. I think there's a lot of skill expression in Nami as well that people maybe sleep on a little bit. The combo with Lucian was obviously really annoying for a while, but I think that still required a high level of skill to be played properly, and so I'll put Nami in B. In A, sorry. Nasus can go in B. The stacking fantasy is really cool. I think Riot have overbuffed him a lot. If you look at patches, Nasus just receives like buff after buff after buff, and that makes him just quite annoying to play against, to be honest, when he doesn't really need to be super strong. Nasus was only ever, I think, supposed to be this quite niche champion that people played if they thought they were going to be able to survive lane. And at playing that role, I think he's quite interesting. Obviously, the story with Shurima is super cool, and that maybe helps him out a little bit. I think he belongs in B, though. Nautilus is another S tier in terms of support play. Another fantastic example of a support done right. Not just there to protect his ally, but also to initiate fights, and design is really interesting. I think when I started playing, it was Nautilus release patch or Fiora release patch around that sort of time, and you logged in and you saw this gigantic diver with this massive anchor, and you sort of knew like, oh wow, some of the designs in this game are actually really interesting, so I'm going to give Naut S. Nico, especially Nico rework, can get an... Oh, God, this is hard actually. I'm going to give Nico B. I think when she exists in a strong state, she becomes a lane bully, she becomes really obnoxious. I think she should maybe be more focused on control, and maybe even be more like a bruiser, something like Sylas, because a lot of her power sort of comes from her EQ combo, when actually she should be trying to deceive people and play around the deception of her passive. She doesn't really do that, so I'm going to put her in B. Nidalee can go in A, only because I think Nidalee is a great example of designing champions so that skilled junglers can take over games. I think Nidalee's a really great example of that. I don't like her kit. I don't like really how she plays anymore. I think she does feel clunky, and I think she does feel dated. But I think in terms of a champion that lets people carry games, I think we have to give Nidalee some credit that she survived this long, doing the same thing where she just wants to run you over from the jungle role. I think we have to give her some credit there. Nilah can go, and I like playing Nilah as well, but I think Nilah's going to go C. It did feel on release, and there was a lot of talk about this, you know, if it's true or not, that's not for me to decide, that she sort of felt like another Samira, and that's slightly true. I think the concept of someone who's hyper joyful and wants to defeat these gigantic enemies is not something that you really see in a kit. I think her passive is really annoying. She'll level up quicker. I think her gameplay is actually quite fun, but she does play very similar to Samira, and I don't know if she quite executes on the sort of fantasy that they had in mind for her. Nocturne's B, only because of his ult. I think apart from that, that is a champion that desperately needs love. I like the idea of people can't see, but actually look at the skills that guy gets, and honestly, it needs a rework. It does like nothing past 30 minutes. Nunu rework, easy A. I don't like getting spam ganked by a gigantic snowball rolling kid, but I like the idea of a kid and a Yeti working together. I think his ult's super iconic. I think you've got famous Nunu mains who make it really enjoyable to watch good Nunu play, and I think Nunu's going to get A. Olaf's going to get A. I think again super strong at times, and can be quite annoying when he's super strong. But in terms of a Viking that runs at people and isn't scared of dying, I think Olafskate is a great example of how that could be done correctly. Orianna's going to get an S for me, and again, maybe fondness for old pro play. That is, for me, Ahri and Orianna and who's the one? Syndra? For me, are what mid lane meta is. And that's boring, yeah, but I love her ult. I love her concept of this robotic girl who controls a ball around the battlefield. I think Orianna is a much healthier version of something like Azir, where she controls something to do damage. Ornn's going to get S. I think Ornn's an interesting addition to Freljord. I think Ornn's an interesting addition to tank. I think as someone who enjoys playing tanks, I think Ornn's cool because you can actually at times threaten to actually kill people. I think his passive is super interesting. I think there have been times when Ornn has been super broken and super slept on. I think he's almost always a good pick in top lane unless he's hard countered. And again, I really like him. Okay, Pantheon. B, Gladiator Warrior from Targon, and already those two things are like, what? How do they match? Kit is, even now, a little bit dated, feels a little bit dated. I think with Pantheon, it's sort of like, what is he supposed to do in the game? He ults in and stuns one person and puts his E up and hopefully runs away. To me, it just doesn't quite work with this Gladiator fantasy that he's got going on. I don't even mind Pantheon, and again, I think in terms of the lore and being an aspect, it's quite cool that that's how they designed him, but I just think in game, he's sort of let down by how he plays. Poppy's going to get A. Poppy is awesome and slept on and designed super cool and much better than old Poppy, which was just frankly a mess. Yordle with a hammer who doesn't realise she's a hero, stunning people against the wall, stopping them from dashing away, or throwing them away back to their own base. Yeah, I like Poppy. I think she's super cool. Pyke's nice because, again, we've got to give Riot some credit when they do something right. The space for a support who could carry a game was maybe quite limited, and Pyke is a really cool addition to that. I like the idea that he scales with lethality. Obviously, maybe they tried to do it a little bit later on with Senna, and Senna is maybe a similar example in that she does scale with AD, but Senna's maybe a little bit more problematic in terms of how she's dominated games sometimes. Kiana's going to get C, and again, I'm sorry if there's any Kiana mains watching, but seriously, like, the champ either one-shots the whole team with ult or does nothing, especially in lower elos, does nothing. It's always been one of these sort of higher elo champions that only the most skilled 2% of players can play. I don't find it particularly interesting, and the concept of someone who wields elements is, to me, not fully explored in a kit. She ends up just sort of dashing at you and throwing a random spell that she's recently gathered at you, and I don't find it particularly interesting. Quinn, similarly, in fact, actually, I was going to put Quinn C, but I think Quinn can go D. I don't think Quinn at all is interesting. I think she feels really, really bad to play. I think she's largely survived on her ult and the fact that she can ranged auto attack people in top lane. She's only ever played against certain other champions, and if you're a Quinn main, my god, you must be one of the least interesting people in the entire world in my mind. Rakan is S. Rakan's a great example of how can we make a flexible mobile support and keep him balanced. I think Rakan's got great game impact. I think Rakan is quite interesting. I think his story with Xayah is interesting. I think, but largely Rakan is propped up by how fun he is to play and how fun he is to watch. Rammus is going to get C. I like the concept. I like the idea that you can pick him into all AD teams and basically just win. I think in terms of actually playing him though, I always find him super boring to play. I always find him really, really boring to play against, especially if I'm playing an AD champion. And I think he ends up just more annoying than he is strong at any particular time. Rek'Sai again is a weird one. I think Rek'Sai is going to get a C, and again, I'm sorry to Rek'Sai players. It's never a champion that to me has exceeded the fantasy of the champion. It's never a champion that has quite become the queen of the void like it's supposed to be. Bel'Veth was maybe a better attempt at it, but I don't find either of those two champions to be a particularly good representation of what the void could be. Rel's going to get A. I think Rel's a great addition to support. I think the way she plays is quite interesting and a little bit flexible. She does just go in like Nautilus and Leona, but the idea of stealing stats and the horse and the mounting up, I think that makes Rel a little bit more dynamic than those two champions. Maybe not quite as iconic though, and that's why I'm putting her in here. Well, that's cool. Zorn support, who sort of gives her allies these chemicals to keep them alive and to influence fights. I like that. I like her W. I like her ult. I don't really like her E and her Q, and I don't really think that those two abilities really fit the dynamic and the fantasy that she's going for. But I think already her presence in pro play has been good to see, and I think she does make the game a little bit more interesting in bot lane. Renekton can go in. Have I got him? Oh man, I don't know where I put Renekton, guys. I'm not even going to lie. And it's getting harder and harder to find the champions. There he is. I'm going to put Renekton in S. I think he's, again, like Jax, like Camille. Maybe not like Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser's a little bit more complicated. But he's a great example of the face of top lane. I think he's got great lore relevance. I think he plays well. I think he's maybe harder to play than he was at certain points in history. I think you maybe have to be deceptively confident in your Renekton now to actually play him. But I think Renekton is iconic and is one of these champions that people just associate with top lane. Rengar is going to get C. I don't like how he plays. I don't like the fact that he's been reworked 4 or 5 times. I think when Rengar's strong, there is just no counterplay, and I think the champion should be fully reworked again, frankly. I don't find his concept interesting. I think he's just another version of Kha'Zix. I don't find that rivalry interesting. I don't find the jumping out of bushes interesting. Hopefully that clears up. In fact, I don't find any Rengar interesting. I'm sorry. Riven B. Again, maybe a good indicator of where the league was going when it was released. Now though, feels super dated. Only like played by a very small player base who are all super skilled at it, and so coming against a good Riven is really punishing and really hard as they abuse animation cancelling and whatever else. While 99% of other Riven players who are picking it up for their first 5 games on it generally have no idea what they're doing. And becomes quite easy to play against. It's one of these champions where if you come against the main, you're going to have a bad time. If you don't come against the main, you're probably going to be chilling. Rumble is awesome. Again, quite obnoxiously strong for a while, but hopefully should be in a better balanced state now. His ult's a great sort of unique ability. Building a team around it can be quite fun. I like the Flame Spitter. I don't really like his W, but I think the concept of a Yordle who builds his own mech is cool. I like his skins. I like how he plays, and I think Rumble is one of the better league champs. Ryze can go B, only because again it's a sort of one of these symbols of Riot's failures to correctly rework something and failed reworks, and I think Ryze now is okay. It's quite rare to see a Ryze though, and again in that way you would think if they were successful a lot more people would be playing him. Largely still locked to pro play. I don't think you see Ryze players in lower elo. And again, when you think about what Ryze used to be the face of league, and if he was still the face of league, then we would probably be putting him in S tier. But I think Ryze has just largely become this symbol of we need to rework this champion, and then the rework itself being a failure. Samira is going to go in B. Cool concept, ADC sort of assassin, wants to be super stylish and outplay everything, but I think in terms of actually executing that, it just becomes this sort of wind wall skill check, ults everyone and either gets fed early in the game and runs the whole game, or doesn't get fed early game and becomes just a massive drain on the rest of the team. Sejuani can go in A. I would put her in S, but I don't think in terms of Freljord she's maybe as impactful as some of the ones that I've put up there already. I think the concept's super awesome. I like the idea that someone's riding a bar and swinging a giant flamethrower around. I think Sejuani's fun to play. I think Sejuani's had great relevance in pro throughout the time that she's been. I'm trying to think. There used to be an old Sejuani, but I can't remember for the life of me how she used to play. Since ever she's been reworked or minor reworked or whatever it is, I think Sejuani's been awesome. Senna can go in. Again, I'll put Senna in A because again she is iconic and people know about Senna, and Senna has had lots of different ways to play, and Senna has been played in lots of different combos, and Senna is relevant in pro play a lot of the time when she's strong. but it is one of these champions where it's sort of like a balanced nightmare, and if it's strong, it dominates solo queue and pro, and if it's not, then it's just completely worthless and completely unpickable. Seraphine can go in B. A lot of drama, a lot of controversy about Seraphine at the time of release. I think actually given Skarner's rework, I think maybe some of that anger can be taken away now. I think Seraphine's fine for the kind of player that wants to play it. Just another sort of version of Lux, really. Quite easy to play, quite simple. Artillery mage, supposed to be just like super pretty, singing songs. Yeah, fine, whatever. It's not for me. But I think it largely is quite inoffensive. Set can go in A, and again, Set's maybe struggling to see relevance at the moment. Actually feels quite sort of one-dimensional and often quite easily kited, maybe like something like Garen, but actually maybe even feels less able to carry than something like Garen. Again, that might be controversial to the Set mains out there. But I do have a massive soft spot for Set in my heart, because I did sort of take a break from League for a long time, and it was the release of Set and the idea of building up the damage that other people had done to you, and then firing it back at them that actually got me back into the game, and so we have to give Set some credit there. Oh, I do anyway. Shaco is annoying and has no law and is played by like 4 people, and again feels like one of those champions a little bit like Heimerdinger, where they sort of had to adjust around the fact that the annoying demon clown had already been designed and didn't actually fit into the game, and they're sort of still trying to figure all that out. Shen's gonna get A. Shen's really cool. Concept of saving allies from top is really cool. Would be nice to see top more involved in the game, right? Cough cough. But I think Shen is quite a nice concept of this tanky ninja who maybe leads the clan and has a lot of rivalries with other characters we've already mentioned. I do like Shen a lot. Shyvana is B. Concept super cool. Woman who transforms into dragon. Yeah, that's really awesome. However, I think fantasy in game largely just becomes spam E on cooldown. I haven't played Shyvana in a while, and so maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that's not right anymore. But I think that's largely what Shyvana has devolved into over the last sort of 5 years. Could be wrong. Singed is cool. Singed is iconic. Singed plays really differently from anyone else. Yeah, he's annoying. Yeah, Singed mains are strange people. But I think when you see a Singed, you're sort of like, okay, at least it's going to be unique. At least we're going to get something different this game. At least we're going to sort of see a different side to top lane this game. And so Singed for me gets A, just for how he plays. Sion rework, I can't put him there, can I? No, I'll put him here. Sion rework, massive success. Showed right that they actually can rework things properly. Really fulfills the fantasy of a tank who builds HP and gets HP naturally from farming. Concept super cool. Charges head first, zombie man, yeah, awesome. Gigantic tank when done right. And I think Balfs obviously gets him some points for how iconic his Sion plays have been. Sivir can go C. Super dated. Needs love. Needs some help. Her kit feels like, frankly, a bit of a joke at this point. I don't like it. I don't like that it devolves into wave clear. I don't like her ult anymore. I don't think it's actually super helpful for Sivir. I think she would be benefiting more from something else. Would you know that Sivir was a mercenary if you looked at it? Probably not. Would you know that Sivir was a mercenary if you played it? Probably not. And so that, for me, is going to go in C. Skarner and Skarner rework is going to go B. I like Skarner. I've always liked Skarner. I was Mastery 7, even on old Skarner, the one with the sort of pillars, and even before that I played a little bit of Skarner with the Triforce and Iceborne Gauntlet and things like that. But we have to acknowledge that for a lot of people, Skarner is just a forgotten about champion and is something that no one would ever really play, and so we have to give him B. I think his ult's iconic and I like the new sort of take on it. I think the fact that he's still kept a lot of his identity is cool. However, I think only time will tell really if Skarner rework is a success or a failure. God, we're getting there. Okay, not many. Sona, C. Okay, because again, feels super dated. Feels like an older version of newer champs that we've got since then. Q is damage, W is healing, E is move speed. Oh my god, I'm falling asleep just thinking about this champion. Hopefully that helps. Soraka, C, boring. Heal bot. Silence, oh my god. Global heal, boring. Snooze, sorry. Feels like a sport designed literally 12 years ago. Swain, B. Interesting concept. Commander of Noxus gave up his powers to a demon. Yep, that's nice. I don't think he's ever been fully. I don't think he's ever fully realised his fantasy though. And I think Swain's one of these champions where it'd be cool if he was more iconic and if he had more moments in, the biggest games in the league, rather than just your average solo queue game. For him to achieve like a more iconic status in the roster. Sylas can go A. Super well designed, super interesting. Good sort of development of Demacia's story. Maybe still got some elements to explore there. I think mid laners like Sylas. I think Sylas makes a lot of mid lane matchups quite interesting in how he steals ults and things like that. And so Sylas is getting A. Syndra similarly is getting A. She's like Ahri and Orianna in that she represents mid lane to me and what mid lane is. And the high skill cap that some of these mid lane champions have. However, I think Syndra's maybe struggled a little bit more with balance and things like that than the other two, and so I'm going to put Syndra in here. She's just maybe slightly more uninteractive as well when she's super strong. Tahm is going to get C. I like the idea, I like the design. Catfish Man, who either eats enemies or allies, but I think Tahm has been really, really annoying at certain points in his history. I think he's been really overtuned at certain points in his history. I think if we're doing a guy that's supposed to protect, that's fine. But I don't know if his kit has ever really helped him fully do that, apart from his ult, obviously. I think Tahm Senna at certain points was really annoying. I think Tahm Top at certain points was really annoying. And so it's a shame because I do actually really, really like the guy's design. I think his voiceover is one of the best in the league. I think he's got some awesome skins, but I think he's held back by just how obnoxious he's been at certain points. Take and go in A. A more modern take on some of these sort of mid lane champs. Maybe slightly underwhelming, but again, the concept of something that stops dashing and being a Shurima character who's maybe a little bit less powerful and doesn't come from that sort of long lineage of 1,000-year-old beings who ascended in Shurima. That's kind of cool. And I think Taliyah, I don't think anyone could be super annoyed with her. She's playable mid, she used to be playable jungle, and that's quite awesome in itself. The rework on her was quite nice. Again, I think it actually made her more enjoyable to play, and so Taliyah for me gets A. Talon gets C. He's one of these assassins that largely almost just feels like it's designed to burst one person. Actually feels quite outdated, and I think his passive super annoying, to be honest. He just relies on like one-shotting someone. I don't particularly find Talon super interesting. Taric can go B. I think his rework was a success, although again there's some nostalgia there for old Taric and his sort of 3-pixel old model that he used to have. A lot of great games back in the day, Learning League, target stunning someone and jumping on them. But those days are long gone, and new Taric is an interesting reinvention of the idea of being sort of tied to an ally and helping an ally out. I think his ult's really interesting and impactful. I would, again, if I was going to raise him up a little bit more, I would maybe just think about has Taric had enough moments in iconic league games to boost him up, and I would say Taric probably hasn't. Teemo can go in A, and that might be controversial in itself, but I think people outside the league know about Teemo, and so we should sort of recognise how iconic he is. To play against, he's annoying. To play, though, he is super fun. I think he's someone who would really just benefit from a slightly more updated kit that didn't revolve so much around the shrooms, but I think Teemo can go A quite comfortably, yeah. Thresh, S. Upon release, showed Riot that support can be more interesting than what they'd previously been designing. Allows for a lot of skill expression, allows for some of the greatest support players we've ever seen. He's like Blitzcrank mixed with, I don't know, someone who saves their allies, like Janna mixed with, I don't know, someone who, gets the, like Alistar, I don't know, Thresh is everything, and Thresh was super, super cool to see released back in the day, and I think Thresh is a great example of high skill support, and has opened the door for Riot to design more of those champions. Tristana can go in A for pro play viability, maybe alone. I think there's great moments with Tristana in the past. I used to watch Imp play Tristana in like 2013ish, 2014ish, and that was really good. He was probably the best Tristana I've ever seen. However, since then she's become a little bit more mid-centric, and I think it's cool to have AD mid laners. Tristana might be the best example of an AD mid laner that I don't mind seeing too much, but I think at the moment she's maybe a little bit too dominant, and it would be nice to see her just become a little bit more balanced around the average player, or around the fact that she's picked a lot in Pro. Trundle gets B. I like his rework. Again, I liked old Trundle. I'm a bit strange like that. Ice Troll, yeah, okay. With a big club, yeah, I'm listening. Who steals stats from people, okay. And again, for me, I like that a lot, but I think for the average player, Trundle is super boring and has at times devolved into just outstatting people with Q. When actually there is a really interesting champion in there, revolving around using E a lot to decide and dictate where people can and can't go. I think Trundle is interesting, but he is just maybe a little bit too simple, and there is maybe a little bit more in his kit that could be explored than just bashing people hard with club. Tryndamere C could be cool, the idea of not getting to dive for 5 seconds. However, Tryndamere mains just seem to decide that there is only one lane in the game and that's the only place they go in, and they will either win or lose you a game. I think Tryndamere feels really dated now. I think his crit mechanic is really obnoxious, and we have to be honest about that. It either wins or loses lane for people, played by good Tryndameres, and I don't particularly enjoy the champion. TF can go in A, maybe would be S, at one time would have been S, certainly. Pro play staple, lets mid laners influence the map. Again, he's had moments though of being obnoxious. He's had moments where his passive used to be ridiculously overstarted and he was making, loads more gold than anyone else. I think to play against, it's always annoying knowing that you've got to watch out for TF. But in terms of being iconic, TF is without a doubt one of those iconic mid lane picks. Twitch is going to go B. The rework was good. Super annoying to play against though, and there are certain combos which will not be named, where a good Twitch just carries another player, and the other player doesn't really even have to do anything. I don't think it's fun to be ambushed by someone coming out of stealth and one-shotting you, or one-shotting your whole team, and good Twitches can just take over games. I don't think his design's particularly interesting. I do like his ult, but I don't know if it really gets the idea of this guy who just stacks poison across, because normally Twitch just kills you with autos anyway. I would like to see him become more focused on applying poison. Udyr, this is not reworked Udyr Splash, but we will talk about reworked Udyr. It's going to go in B. Udyr's weird, and always has been weird, and always has been a little bit niche. I love the design of the rework when it was released. This sort of big, bulky, sort of bear man who switches styles, sort of monk-like. In concept, really cool, but in terms of how Udyr actually plays a lot of the time, it just revolves at running at someone in different ways, and that is quite boring. We have to be honest about that. His matchups in top become really uninteresting and really uninteractive in a lot of them, as he just spams R at you. And so Udyr's going to get a B. I think it's better than it was, but it's not particularly interesting. Urgot's going to go A. I like Urgot. I think Urgot's quite a cool addition to top. Maybe not quite pro viable enough to get anywhere higher than that, and you could argue that actually Urgot has never really been pro viable, but I remember back in the good old days with old Urgot where he was played ADC and he used to be able to swap someone's position, and you watch some of those top games and actually Urgot was pro viable, and he was even then quite interesting to watch. If he landed that E, you were taking free Qs to the face and you were getting position swap back into Urgot's team, and if you didn't, the champ was useless and garbage and just became a walking crab basically. But now he's a lot better, and he's actually quite an interesting champion now. Varus can go A, again iconic, especially for pro player. I don't think there's been any more ADC. He was at one time, let's just clear this, he was at one time the most played AD carry in pro play. Every pro game was sort of decided by if Varus was going to be played or not. And that iconicness, however, we also have to look at the other side of that. It's a champion where the balance of it, again, dictates how much it's played. Can be just really, really annoying when it's too strong, and can just feel unfair to play against when it's too strong. Vayne can go B. I don't like Vayne. I think we have to credit Vayne for maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but I think Vayne largely invented this idea of playing League for a montage or playing League for clips. She is the outplay machine, but she's not particularly interested now. She just relies on true damage to be relevant, and I don't think Vayne's deserving of anything more than a B. I guess cool. Again, I'm largely in favour of Yordles and think Yordles are really interesting. This is like an evil dark villain who stacks up ability power over the course of the game, becomes a phenomenal threat, if you'll pardon the Veigar related pun there, by the end of the game. Always fun to play something that has over 1000 AP by the end of the game. The stun's cool. I think his ult is maybe a little bit uninteractive, and that maybe just holds him back. But I think Veigar is largely a good addition to the roster. Vel'Koz can get C. I don't think Vel'Koz has ever really been a champion that fulfills his fantasy of being a super smart, just outsmart everything champion. I think the Q is cool. I think the W is boring. I think the E is boring. I think the R is like just a washed down MF ult, to be honest. And I think Vel'Koz is largely a failure as a champion. Vex is cool, but again, I don't think we've seen enough of Vex yet to decide if she's going to maybe go up or down in concept, and we were told it was going to be an anti-dash champion. In reality, is that the case? No, it's just sort of another mage with, frankly, a rather generic kit and reset on ult because Riot ran out of ideas and didn't know what else to do. Vi can go in S. I think Vi is one of the faces of the league now, and again, partly because of Arcane. I think also though in jungle and in pro play, Vi is always relevant and is always in the back of people's minds as being relevant. I think the ult's super cool. I think to play is quite fun, and so I've got no issues putting Vi there. Viego is going to go A. I think over time people have sort of warmed to Viego and realised he's actually maybe not too cancerous now that he's slightly more balanced. I think it requires a decent amount of skill to play. I think the story's interesting and one that wasn't told before. I think yes, it was botched at the time, but I think now we can all largely agree that Viego is a fine addition to League. Victor's cool, but again, I think Victor is another of these champions where maybe just needs a little bit of love now, to be honest. I think Victor takes too long to get going. I like his E, and again, I think his E is a great ability. I think just Victor really struggles to ever feel like he's the right pick in favour of... You'd rather have something else instead of Victor, is the point I'm making. Again, maybe Arcane will change some of that and Victor will become more relevant. It would be nice to see. He could be on the same sort of level as Orianna, Syndra, Ahri, but he feels out of those three the one who's been left behind the most. And Vlad's fine, and that's all I can really say about him. He's having a bit of a moment at the moment, but I don't think that's enough to change where I want to place him. He was great back in sort of season 2. People used to play Vlad a lot, but he's never really changed since then. Concept is someone who sort of summons blood and takes blood from people and sort of uses that to cast abilities is cool, but I don't think Vlad does anything super interesting with it. Sort of just evolves into farming until he can 1v9 a game. Volley rework for me, one of the great successes of reworks. I love Volibear, he's one of my most played champions. I want to put him in S, but I think that's not quite fair to how the majority League player base views him. Volibear is fantastic, Volibear's fun, his ult's fun, he plays well. I don't like the top lane variations of him, but I think when he's played normally in jungle with just AD items, I think that's a really cool champ. Warwick can go B. I think Warwick rework helped him a lot, but I don't think he's an interesting champion. I think the ult concept is cool, but I don't think he ever gets enough movement speed on non-meme builds to ever really make it anything particularly interesting. And he just sort of devolves into being this beginner jungler that can never die when he's clearing camps. Wukong's fine, but again, I think Wukong maybe just needs to be a little bit clearer in terms of what role do Riot actually want Wukong to be played in. I think his ult seems really interesting until you actually sort of play against it and you're like, oh, it's kind of boring actually. I think his clone seems really interesting until you play with it and then you're like, oh, that's kind of boring actually too. And so Wukong, it feels like, should be really interesting, but ends up being just a little bit bland. Xayah can go in... I want to put Xayah in S actually, but I think I'll put Xayah in A. White Rakan, they were both a great addition to the game. Xayah's a great addition to ADC as this sort of self-peel type champion who doesn't actually need to rely on people if she plays well. I think Rakan is the more interesting addition out of the two, though. Zverev can go C. Script champion, played by scripters. You never see him. If you do, it's by some very, very strange person who's played 2 million games as Zverev. I like his ult. I think that's about it. I think the rest of his kit just feels super dated. Shin can go B. Kind of feels like just the backup jungler that people go to when other stuff falls off. I don't, for the life of me, remember his old ult, but I think his new ult is slightly more interesting. But can feel obnoxious when he's sort of too strong in particular moments. Yasuo can go in A tier. I want to put Yasuo in S in terms of iconic, but I think Yasuo, in like for most people, becomes this sort of annoyance that they've always got to consider in the back of their mind. If they come into running into a Yasuo who's played so many games, the game becomes a bit of a chore. He is, don't get me wrong, he's very, very iconic, and he is one of the faces of League of Legends. I just think that there's a lot of toxicity and unhealthiness for the game that comes with Yasuo. Just like Yone, actually, although I think Yone is maybe slightly better designed and slightly more bruisery version of Yasuo. I think Yone is maybe slightly healthier for the game than something like Yasuo is. Yasuo was like this weird midpoint, like where they wanted to make something like Irelia, but also make it ninja, and they're sort of trying to appeal to a certain demographic, 12-year-old boys. I think Yone does it better, like I say, and the concept and story between the two of them is interesting, but I just don't have an awful lot of love for them, to be honest. I'm going to put Yorick C and take personal biases out of this one. I think Yorick's concept is cool. I think Yorick has always been, when he's strong at least, annoying to play against, and that's the reality of the champion. Old Yorick was obnoxious to play against, really, really fun though, and new Yorick is just sort of a little bit like Tryndamere, like I'm going to split push and 1v9 in the game, otherwise my team is going to lose, and I don't think that makes for particularly fun gameplay. Yumi's going to go, oh actually I've got an F, there we go. Should not have been added to the game. I don't have an awful lot more to say. I think we've all played the game long enough to sort of decide about that. When it's strong, it dominates pro, it's skillless, and oh yeah, but there is skill when you have to detach. I don't give a fuck. I think the champion was a mistake, and I don't think 90% of League player base would be angry if the champion was legitimately removed from the game. I don't think it's well designed, and I think it needs to go. Zac can go in A. Cool concept, cool design. Again, had a bit of a moment this year, being maybe too strong. But over his history, I think Zac's been a great addition to jungle. Can engage from miles away. Picking up bobs and being a giant slime monster is a fun concept. Zed can go in A, I suppose. The design's cool. He's got iconic moments. Some of the probably the most viewed League clips of all time involve Zed, so we should give him some credit for that. But again, like a lot of these assassins, I think Zed just feels like he sort of finds a hard time ever fitting in any sort of pro play draft now, as assassins become sort of less and less relevant. Zeri can go in. I'll put Zeri in A, because I think she's an interesting addition to Zorn. I think she's energetic. I think she shows a maybe more light-hearted side to that region. I think she's fun when she gets going. I think she's obviously had horrific issues with balance, but I think most ADCs are quite glad that they get to play something like Zeri, which just feels a little bit different to a normal ADC. Ziggs A, again, AP alternative to playing ADC. Always nice to have the option of it. Yes, it's been too strong, particularly recently, but I think there is some skill expression in Ziggs. I think Ziggs is also a nice, easy champion to pick up and play if you're like learning mid lane or something like that. And I think actually he maybe could do with a little bit of love, a little bit of law, something like that, because I think Ziggs is a cool concept. So he can go in A purely because I think I read somewhere that he's not been changed balance-wise in over 10 years, and I don't know if there's a better example of what a well-balanced champion looks like. Again, it's rare that you come up against a Zilean and think, holy shit, this is unbalanced. I think his ult's iconic, I think his bombs are pretty cool, and I think he largely fulfills his role. Again, I think if Zilean got his Legends of Runeterra update, he would maybe go into S and people would actually play him a little bit. I think that's the one sort of point against Zilean, is that no one really plays the champ. So we can go in B. It was one of those champions when you see it released, you're like, oh my god, here we go again. Why are they letting her do that? I think the thing that maybe stops me putting it lower in terms of how unhealthy it can be to play against is that I don't actually see Zoe that much anymore. But it can, don't get me wrong, Zoe can be incredibly frustrating to play against. Zyra can go in B. Plant Lady, concept's cool. Does it actually play like that? And is the concept actually cool to play? No, I would argue not. And so I think Zyra can get a B. In fact, Zyra could go C. I just think in terms of someone who is supposed to control wildlife, I don't know if Zyra does that. She just ends up being sort of very, very bland and very boring. Briar can go in B. She's frankly not been out long enough to make a proper impression of where she belongs. It's sort of weird. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised really that she's been relegated to a solo queue champ. I think in terms of solo queue champs, there's some interesting skill expression there, but in terms of this unchained, unshackled, hungry vampire monster, I don't know if her ult really fits her identity, and that sort of stops me fully liking the champ. Hui's cool. I think over time we're going to sort of realise that Hui's a great addition to the game. I think when he came out he was actually horrifically overstarted, and he's only just been sort of tuned down to a balanced level. I think over time, as pro play carries on, I think we're going to see more Hui as people get more confident playing him, and when we have seen him so far, he has been really cool to watch. Cassante can go in B. I think the concept's awesome. I think more black representation is awesome. I think to play, when you pop off on him, he feels great, but I think we have to be honest in that this is not a champion that was designed well, and I think it was designed by people who didn't know how exploited his kit was going to become. I think actually pro players have made this champion look like it's frankly unbalanced for a lot of the time it's been out, and it should have been left on the cutting room floor or reworked before it came out in the state that it did. Millia can go in A. I think he's again a great sort of modern addition that actually feels a little bit more retro than some of these sort of new league supports. I think the concept's cool. I think his art style and his gameplay is really charming. I think he maybe feels sometimes a little less impactful than he actually is in games, and so I'm going to put him in A. Naafiri can go in C. I've never really got what they were going for with Naafiri. It's a darkin weapon that bonded to a dog. Okay, fine. But I think it really just became an excuse to put a character with a dog model in the game. Her gameplay is really not interesting, guys. We have to be honest. And her ult is maybe one of the most boring ults in the game, in my mind. And so I'm going to put Naafiri in C. And then Smolder finishes off with a B tier. The concept of a dragon and the fantasy of a dragon is really cool, but again, he's had problems with being balanced or being unbalanced and devolving into being something quite boring at certain points in his history. Hopefully becomes more balanced over time as the game goes on. Have I got an S+? What about, have I got a top lane S+? Wow, did I really put, I put Camille there. Do I like this? Do I not like this? What do I need? So let's say top. AD carry. Mid. Have I got jungler? Ah, yeah. No way, that's too much Demacia. Too much Demacia. What about, do I like that? Okay. I think we'll keep it simpler than that. I think, to me, I'm going to stick with my gut instinct. And that's boring, but that's my list. Did I get anything wrong? Did I make you hate me with any of my picks? Let me know. If you enjoyed listening, drop me a like or subscribe. Frankly, I don't care. I don't owed enough of these, but hopefully you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.